On mass resignations finally reached the top of the British government, Prime Minister Boris Johnson is bowing out after days of chaos and mutiny within his own party.
Boris Johnson's career was always one of extremes. He defied the rules of politics and scored a number of wins. But gaffes and blunders also became part of his brand. Boris Johnson held major offices before becoming Prime Minister in July of 2019, from London Mayor to UK Foreign Secretary. But it was Brexit that gave Mr Johnson his big chance. His co-leadership of the Brexit campaign proved victorious in a 2016 referendum, and a promise to get Brexit done, that eventually winning him the prime ministership in July of 2019 without an election. 4 months later, he secured the party's biggest parliamentary majority since Margaret Thatcher. When he eventually began his term in office, lawmakers resisted his Brexit plans and he suspended Parliament. It's a move that the Supreme Court deemed illegal, and his opponents say that it was an example of his disregard for the law. There were also many issues, including the status of Northern Ireland, that were not resolved when Britain was eventually out of the European Union. Another curveball, COVID-19. Johnson's handling of the pandemic drew mixed reviews, from initially appearing relaxed about it to imposing a full lockdown in March of 2020. Now, one thing that went through right, investing early in vaccine development and bulk purchases. Now, that move gave him a poll boost, but his troubles were brewing. Mr Johnson faced allegations of taking money from a Conservative donor to furnish his official apartment. He also faced a backlash when the government tried to change parliamentary standard rules. That happened when a lawmaker was found guilty of illicit lobbying. Then there was Partygate. Revelations that the Prime Minister held social gatherings in his Downing Street office and home while the country was in COVID lockdown. But the final straw from many MPs involved Conservative lawmaker Chris Pincher. Mr Johnson acknowledging that it was a mistake to have promoted Pincher, knowing that he'd been accused of drunkenly groping two men at a private members' club.
And Simon Tormey, Dean at the Faculty of Social Sciences and Law at the University of Bristol, joins us now. Professor Tormey, I quote from Mr Johnson's brief speech: "I will serve until the new leader is in place." Now, that could take weeks or months, depending on how long the Tory party takes to get its act together. Now, should it take months, will they allow Mr Johnson to stay on as caretaker PM across these few months?
Yeah, it's a very interesting point. I mean, we don't have clear constitutional advice on this other than until Johnson has been removed, he has a right to stay in place. So I think what will probably happen is that they will try to accelerate over the summer process of selecting the next leader. And certainly that name will be known probably by, I would have thought, September, and then we'll have a quick transition. But it's certainly the case that it looks very messy at the moment. It's been a very dramatic day in the UK.
So what a former cabinet minister said, if we get our act together, we could actually get a new PM by the end of this month. That's not realistic.
I don't think so, because I think Johnson, I mean, what history tells us is that prime ministers who've been deposed tend to stay on until or unless they decide that they're going to step down. So David Cameron stepped down very quickly. We had an acting PM, but Johnson wants to stay on until the next PM has been selected. And I think now he has resigned. He's formally given notice. It may be that the Tory party accept that and they don't seek to put in an acting PM. And who would that person be in any case? It's very difficult to see them coalescing around a figure. So I suspect that Johnson will probably, now he has resigned, he'll get to stay in over the summer and be quickly replaced September, October.
Also, whoever takes over from Mr Johnson will need to build support within the party. Our correspondent earlier on suggested three names: Ben Wallace, Defence Secretary, Rishi Sunak, the former Chancellor of the Exchequer, as well as Penny Mordaunt, the Trade Minister. I take it there are many more names besides these three. For you, who are the strongest candidates?
Yeah, I just very quickly wrote down 8 names here. The complication is that the election initially is a sort out amongst the Tory MPs themselves, but it's the Conservative Party membership, average age in the late 60s, who actually get to decide who is going to be the leader of the Conservative Party and then who is going to be the PM. So that tends to produce kind of figures who are very popular to that older constituency. I think Liz Truss is a name that you should be looking out for, because she has been the foreign secretary and has been really on the front foot as far as Ukraine is concerned. She speaks very strongly. Her stock is very high with the Conservative Party faithful out there in the shires and so on. I think also we need to be thinking about Jeremy Hunt, who did a great job as a health secretary and is completely untainted by all the mess that Boris has been presiding over for the last 12 months or so. I think also a rising star there, Nadeem Zadawi, who had a very good COVID. He rolled out or supervised the rollout of the COVID vaccine. But there's really 7 or 8 very serious names here, and it's actually quite difficult to predict who's going to come out. If I'm pushed, however, I know you really do want a prediction. I think it's Liz Truss versus Rishi Sunak. That would be my guess in the last 2.
And our final question here, you talk about tainted by association with Mr. Johnson. Now, the way in which people resigned or did not resign. So we look at Ben Wallace. He said he did not resign because he thought it was responsible to stay on and manage the government. Rishi Sunak was resigning Tuesday evening. Some could say you are leaving a sinking ship. Chris Pincher is not the first scandal Mr. Johnson has been involved in. There have been many other issues prior to Chris Pincher. If people objected so much to Prime Minister Boris Johnson, why did they not leave sooner? Who is tainted from association with the current Prime Minister?
Look, I don't think that's going to be a very important factor, because I think it can play 2 ways. Those who stayed loyal, like Nadeem Zadawi, can say, you know, loyalty is a really important value for us Conservatives, and I stuck with Boris because there were good things that he was presiding over as well. So I think it cuts both ways. I think those who walked very early on, or those who were uncertain a year ago, they don't stand a better chance in this race. I think the Conservative Party will simply be looking for a really clean now, conscientious, someone with a good analysis of where the UK is at politically and economically, and who's going to take on the Labour Party in the next election, which is not very far away, 2 years away. So they do need to get their act together, and that will require real leadership skills. So I don't think the taint question is really going to decide this particular battle.
Oh, thanks so much for all that, Professor Simon Tormey from the University of Bristol.